I'm going to give you an opportunity while you're waiting to get even more angry and more things to talk about, because prior to his speech on campus, by conservative political commentator and columnist, he's pretty dangerous, Ben Shapiro, University of Connecticut administrators sent an email to students offering counseling services to those who might be offended by his conservative reviews. No, there are some things you just don't have to make up. You can be just like Will Rogers and read the news. According to the website Campus Reform, before the event, UConn students received a letter saying, in part, "We understand that even the thought of an individual coming to campus with the views that Mr. Shapiro expresses can be concerning and even hurtful, and that's why we wanted to make you aware of it as soon as we were informed. Oh my God, in the meantime, please utilize many campus resources available to you should you want to talk through your feelings about this issue." Well, Mr. Shapiro gave that talk on campus this week. It was focused on promoting conservative values, rebutting liberal arguments, and he had a Q&A session as well. It is reported that hundreds of people had to be turned away from a packed auditorium. How many people were actually offended by his presence on campus is totally, completely, and utterly unknown. Joining us now to discuss this and a couple other issues that you just aren't going to believe is Cabot Phillips. He's the media director for campusreform.org. You know, this bothers me, and it bothers me profoundly, Cabot, not because I care about whether somebody is liberal or Democrat. What I care about is that colleges are treating young men and women as infants, and they need to be growing up to become adults. What is going on here?
You would have thought that Ben Shapiro was coming to campus strapped with bombs, holding firearms, firing off in the air. No, he's a little 5'7", short guy walking onto campus, but he is armed with conservative ideas, which is the most dangerous thing to many of these people on campus. And most logical people would assume that if there was a threat of violence because of political ideas, the school would say, we're going to stamp out the violence and allow the free speech. But now these schools these days are saying, we're going to stamp out the free speech and capitulate to the demands of the violent people.
I don't mean to step on your head here, because I know you got some feelings about this as well. Yeah. But if this had been Linda Saucer, for example, who promotes pretty extreme violent views on the left, there would have never been a letter that went out, nor should they, by the way, I want to make it clear, nor should there have been a letter that went out, period. The campus wouldn't feel like they need to protect the students from her crazy extreme left-wing views.
Of course not. We played a little game with Campus Reform where I went around D.C. and I asked people, can you name me one time where conservative students on a campus rioted over the presence of a liberal speaker in the last decade? Not a single person, because it hasn't happened. Conservative students, when a liberal speaker comes to campus, because that's all the speakers on campus these days, they say, I disagree with that person. Maybe I'll go have a peaceful dialogue, or I just won't attend the event. They don't demand counseling. They don't demand that the speaker has to go away. And I want to point out also, just last week, Anita Hill, a liberal activist, was on campus there, and the school posted on their website saying, event is free to all, tickets are free, anyone from the public is allowed to come. Ben Shapiro comes, they shut it down to the public. You had to be a student, you had to get a ticket ahead of time, and they put him in a venue they knew would be too small because they didn't want enough people to be able to go because he was a...
By the same campuses that are protecting and providing cover for an Antifa and other violent left-wing groups.
No, it's crazy.
And we also reported just this week at Stanford, where there is a professor who is helping to start an Antifa group on campus. Right. Antifa, they call themselves the Anti-Fascist Network. Right. They were labeled by the FBI and the DOD as a domestic terror organization, but yet schools don't seem to have a problem with them because they are opposing Donald Trump and other conservatives. But the second that a person like Ben Shapiro, who's a pretty mild-mannered guy, it's not like he's an extreme person, he's just a conservative, and conservatism is extreme. And for anyone wondering what happens when you raise an entire generation on college campuses to only think one idea, liberalism, is acceptable, this is what happens. They don't learn to process anything they disagree with, and they think the only reaction that is allowed for conservatism is violence, and it's to shut it down. They're going to the real world not knowing how to process things that make them uncomfortable.
No.